Suddenly one day, giant creatures appear on the surface of the Earth and reclaim their place. Humans then had to fight fiercely with the monsters that have never been known. There was even a giant creature from the universe. Can people retain the Earth? Everyone join me in the story. In 1999, Dr. Serizawa and assistant Vivian went to a quarry mine in the Philippines when the local people spotted a source of radiation in the tunnel. The Filipinos were very excited and thought it was a uranium mine. They deployed the mining workers, but the inside of the Earth was empty and the collapse of the ground created a hole. Going down there, Serizawa and Vivian saw giant fossil bones. They also discovered another cocoon was broken. Then, when he came to the place with light, Serizawa realized something had left the cave for the sea, creating a huge terrain trace. Meanwhile, in Japan, an engineer named Joe Brody is asking the government to stop the operation of the nuclear power plant because he measured disturbances a few hours ago in the Philippines and shocks appeared near Japan. His son, Ford Brody, also heard the conversation. After that, Joe's wife named Sandra went to the nuclear power plant. Just arriving at the place, he sent a team led by Sandra to check the reactor. The shocks are still strong, but they cannot find the cause. Suddenly, a large movement occurred. It immediately affected the reactor. Sandra's team had to quickly return before they closed the showering door. Joe also ran down to wait. Unfortunately, the shock caused them to slow down, and the toxic smoke came first. There was no other way. Joe only helplessly closed the door. Sandra, on the other side, tried to tell the two of them to live well and then died. The story has not stopped. Suddenly, a loud shout like a monster. Ford looked out and saw that the nuclear power plant had collapsed. 15 years later, Ford grew up and was a U.S. Navy bomb disposal officer who returned from the battlefield after 14 months. He currently has a stable family in San Francisco with his wife Elle and son Sam. After the reunion, Sam went to bed and he was planning to spend some time with Elle. Suddenly, they received a phone call from Japan. Ambassador Quinlan announced that Joe Brody was arrested by the police, so Ford hurriedly set out to Tokyo. Joe was later released. He was arrested by the police because he tried to break into the quarantine zone after the disaster 15 years ago. Joe still thinks that a creature caused a shock to destroy the nuclear power plant, but the government hid this. He also studied what was called the echo animals used to talk to each other. 2 weeks ago, Joe discovered the same signs as the disaster 15 years ago, so he wanted to go back to find the old data. Perhaps one creature talked to another creature. Although Ford did not believe it, but to help Joe forget sad memories, Ford helped him. 2 people wearing protective clothes successfully sneaked in, quickly realizing that the air here was not polluted. They continued to return to the old house. Joe found family photos with data. Suddenly, they heard the sound of helicopters. Then, the two discovered that there was a large base built at the position of the previous nuclear plant. Soldiers now discovered them. The two were later taken into the base, which contained a huge cocoon. In the control room, Serizawa, they are also the head here, measured the shocks that were increasing gradually. When they learned that Ford's mother used to work at the factory, Serizawa immediately ran to see the data Joe measured 15 years ago. Inside, Joe was trying to warn that the creature is capable of creating an electromagnetic pulse, also known as EMP. It will destroy all electrical devices and bring people back to the Stone Age. But everything was not in time. When Serizawa returned to the control room, the creature had absorbed radiation and started to break the cocoon. Everyone built steel fences. However, everything was useless against the creature from the cocoon. It fired an electromagnetic pulse at the ground, causing a power outage and destroying their system. The whole base must evacuate as the monster escaped. In the meantime, the unfortunate Joe fell down. The monster then flew into the sky. A few hours later, Elle, at home, was worried when she saw the earthquake report in Japan and tried to call, but all the lines were busy. Meanwhile, in Japan, the U.S. Navy blocked the whole incident. They came to support Dr. Serizawa and his organization, called Monarch. Serizawa asked to bring both Joe and Ford together. Ford now realized how long Joe had been right, but now it was late. Joe reminded Ford to protect his family, and died. A while later, on the aircraft carrier Saratoga, Commander Stenz is briefing people trying to follow the monster named Muto. Muto constantly creates electromagnetic pulses to destroy radar and satellite data, making them unable to locate its position. Serizawa called Ford and let him know the truth. In 1954, a nuclear submarine went to the bottom of the sea and bored into a creature below. The nuclear tests of the 50s by the U.S. military were to try to kill this creature, but all failed. It lived in ancient times from millions of years ago and absorbed radiation to live. When the water level dropped and radiation on the surface was less, this creature moved down to the ground to absorb radiation from the Earth's core. The Monarch organization was established to monitor and research it. Their name for it is Godzilla. 15 years ago, they found the creature from the same time as Godzilla, a Muto, in the Philippines. Then the Muto moved to Japan and stayed in a cocoon. The nuclear power plant. Because it absorbed radioactive material from the reactor, Monarch did not dare to kill the Muto. They did not expect it to have EMP and to have escaped. Serizawa told them about the positioning echo and that the Muto seemed to talk to someone. After that, Ford was put on a plane to Hawaii to return to his family. A few hours later, the admiral received a report about a missing Russian submarine, and they discovered a nuclear signature near Hawaii. Quickly, a task force was deployed and saw that the Muto was eating the ship's nuclear core. It was impossible to worry about keeping the secret anymore with 1 million people on the island. The army began to attack. Fighters started, and soldiers were deployed on high-rise buildings. However, an electromagnetic pulse from the Muto made the whole island lose power. Meanwhile, Ford, who was taking the train to the airport, was also affected. At the same time on the beach, tsunami warnings cried out. On the aircraft carrier, Serizawa discovered Godzilla was coming. He swam past the aircraft carrier towards the city, creating turbulent tsunamis tens of meters high that destroyed the coast. The military force began to shoot at Godzilla to stop him, but it didn't care and kept going onto the island. Ford came to when he discovered the Muto went to the city and attacked ships. Aircraft tried to attract its attention. Suddenly, the Muto changed direction and went to another location. It turned out that Godzilla had arrived. After a while in the US, Sam and Elle witnessed the battle of both on the TV. The Muto did not fight but fled. Godzilla also returned to the sea, while Ford survived and joined the Navy to return to the United States. Currently, battleships are still following Godzilla. According to simulations, it is moving to San Francisco, and the Muto is too. Serizawa now thinks that the echo the Muto talks to is certainly not Godzilla because the two creatures are enemies. Maybe it is another creature. He and Vivian remembered that they also found another hibernating creature in the Philippines. The US military took it from Monarch and left it in a nuclear waste site. A team was quickly sent to the base in Nevada, but everything was too late. The other creature broke the mountain and came out. Then it entered Las Vegas and destroyed most of the city. This Muto is much bigger than the first and even on par with Godzilla. It has no wings and is a female Muto. The two Mutos are looking for each other to create their species. Because the Mutos have surrounding electrical interference, the US military plan will be to use a huge nuclear bomb to attract both Mutos. And the Mutos attracted Godzilla. They would explode the bomb in the sea 20 miles out. Serizawa thinks they should rely on Godzilla. However, Admiral Stenz thinks waiting for a rescuer is not equal to saving themselves and still conducted the plan. Meanwhile, Ford followed the army and he went down to Nevada. Here, Ford saw a nuclear bomb being shipped by them. Because he was a bomb disposal expert, Ford joined the team to return to San Francisco with his family. Then he called Elle to report that he was coming. After that, due to the darkness making it impossible to watch for the Mutos, the big Muto suddenly appeared near Ford's train and ate the warhead. The next morning, Ford woke up and was the only one alive on the whole team. A helicopter came to pick him up and took the bomb to the beach. Fortunately, the Muto had not swallowed it with the nuclear material. In the city of San Francisco, people were also evacuated. Elle let Sam go ahead, and she stayed and waited for Ford. Admiral Stenz discovered that Godzilla would swim across the bridge into the city. They brought warships and tanks to block it. Even so, Godzilla tried to pass. It didn't want to attack people and just wanted to go to the big Muto. At the same time on the nearby train, due to the fear of electromagnetic pulses, the bomb was manually operated by the core and would explode in 1 hour 30 minutes. Suddenly, the EMP wave hit, making the entire San Francisco lose power. Planes crashed like rain. The small Muto flew down to rob the warhead. Then it flew to the big Muto for a reunion. The big Muto began to dig a nest to prepare for the process of population growth. At the base, Ford was called because the nuclear warhead was now in the city. They hadn't evacuated yet and still had 100,000 people within the explosion radius. Ford and a team would jump from a height of 10,000 meters to disable the bomb because Ford himself had improved the detonation system. Now there was no other way. The US military had to rely on Godzilla to stop them. So they let Godzilla inside. In the city, Elle ran into a basement before the two sides started fighting. A few minutes later, Ford and the task force jumped down. Godzilla was attracting the attention of both Mutos, so they sneaked to the bomb on the nest. Unfortunately, now the nuclear device opened and they had to take the warhead within 27 minutes. On the other hand, Godzilla overwhelmed the big Muto, but the small Muto attacked. Godzilla was losing when an explosion from the nest made the big Muto back off. By that opportunity, Godzilla still energized and fired its breath. The small Muto rushed to block Godzilla for the big Muto to chase after Ford's group. One-on-one, the small Muto was no match and was killed by Godzilla. At this time, unfortunately, a high-rise building also poured down on Godzilla and knocked it out. On the other hand, the task force tried to stop the big Muto. Ford took the boat to the sea. Hoping to stop it, suddenly Godzilla grabbed it and used its atomic breath to destroy the Muto. Godzilla roared like a king and fell to the ground. Ford was also rescued by the army and the bomb was successfully removed. The next morning, Ford reunited with Elle and Sam. After sleeping, Godzilla regained consciousness and returned to the seafloor. At the beginning of part 2, while Godzilla fought with the Muto, below the humans were trying to run away. Among them was a family. Mark and Emma Russell lost a relative, their son. From that day, Emma still could not forget the pain. Currently, 5 years later, in 2019, after the appearance of giant creatures or titans, the world has changed forever. Many protests opposed the Monarch organization and forced them to be responsible for the attacks of Titans. Governments around the world think that these creatures must be destroyed. Mark and Emma are now separated. Before that, the two were leading scientists for the Monarch organization. She is currently with her daughter Madison at a Monarch base in China. Today, they suddenly felt a tremor. The two went to an ancient temple and saw a cocoon about to bloom. A giant worm named Mothra was born. Suddenly, their defense system was broken, and Mothra was trying to escape. A person tried to press the button to destroy the cocoon, but Emma stopped him. Emma immediately took a device and came forward. This device creates a resonance and calms Mothra down. Mothra then proved very gentle to everyone. Suddenly, a group of terrorists attacked all people in the laboratory. Only Emma and Madison are still alive. Meanwhile, in Washington, Serizawa and assistant Vivian are being heard before the U.S. Congress. They intend to protect the giant creatures. The surface of the Earth was once their home, and humans were just living there. He thinks humans have to find a way to survive with Titans. The hearing was interrupted when Serizawa received a notice about the Mothra case and left. A few hours later, a Monarch plane landed at Mark's place. Serizawa announced the situation to him. After the incident 5 years ago, Mark left the organization and did not want to have any involvement with Titans anymore. But Emma continues to study what is called the Orca. It combines the bioacoustic signatures of many different types of monsters to create signals that help attract or traumatize Titans. And it seems that Emma was successful. Serizawa also revealed that they have actually found 17 Titans around the world, and most of them are hibernating. Then they landed on base number 54. It is a drilling rig, but there is a huge base beneath the sea. They built it to monitor and research Godzilla while it sleeps. The person who attacked them was the terrorist Alan Jonah, a merchant of Titan DNA. He was obsessed with restoring the natural order. They are looking for Alan Jonah's next Titan target. At this time, Mark said that after the Orca and Emma, what Alan wants is something bigger. One thing must be equal to Godzilla. At the Monarch base in Antarctica, Alan Jonah's men attacked and killed all the other soldiers. Quickly, they approached the monster called Monster Zero. Unlike other monsters on Earth, it has a strange shape with 3 dragon heads. Then Alan started the bombing to break the ice and had Emma combine Monster Zero's bioacoustic signature. At the rig, people received the emergency alarm. Godzilla waking up, the energy source emitted from his back. It proves that it feels a threat which can overthrow its dominance is about to appear. Then Godzilla suddenly moved quickly in a different direction. Simulations show the path that it was taking to Antarctica. Everyone quickly went to the giant fortress Argo and moved there. In recent years, Monarch has discovered the Monster Zero creature in Antarctica. They did not find its history or origin on Earth, but they are sure that it is the potential opponent of Godzilla. After that, everyone also lost Godzilla's signal when it was moving through the cracks of the Earth's crust. The soldiers began to land and fight against Alan Jonah's people. Mark took care of his family, so he entered the base. However, he did not expect Emma to betray the organization. It was she who created a plan to release the Titans. Then Emma detonated the ice block. Emma and Madison then withdrew on the plane. She activated the Orca to call Monster Zero to the surface. The 3 heads emerged from the ice. It looked around and shot out its breath. When Monster Zero approached Mark's plane and was about to finish it, it suddenly felt danger. Godzilla on the other side broke the ice, rising from the depths. The 2 sides are like longtime enemies. They immediately encountered each other. Monster Zero easily dodged Godzilla's shot and responded, causing Godzilla to fall into a hole. While running away, Vivian died due to the influence or collapse. At this time, the fighter fleet came to support, and the other side was Godzilla, so Monster Zero fled. After a while, the army lost Monster Zero in a storm in Brazil. They only followed Godzilla, and it was on its way to Base 56 in Mexico. Everyone received a call from Emma. She did everything just to save the world. The Earth is being destroyed, and not by Titans, but by humans. And the places where Titans pass through all develop plants again. They are like the Earth's defense system. They appear to prevent the Earth from being destroyed. So, according to nature, they have to release everything. Emma then woke the Titan Rodan in Mexico. People here had not yet evacuated. Bad news is not over yet. It turned out that the storm in Brazil was Monster Zero. It was also going to Mexico. A few minutes later, fighters and the Argo lured Rodan. Where it goes, the land is destroyed. Quickly, Rodan caught up and destroyed all the support aircraft. However, they were able to lure it to Monster Zero. The Argo flew down and let the 2 children fight. Just a few minutes later, Rodan lost very quickly and fell into the sea. Admiral Stenz suddenly called and told everyone to withdraw. They would use newly manufactured weapons called oxygen destroyer bombs. It has the ability to kill all living objects within a radius of 2 miles and are being deployed. Suddenly, the Argo got into Monster Zero's sights. When preparing to grab the Argo, it was very lucky that Godzilla pulled Monster Zero into the sea. The water is much more beneficial to Godzilla, allowing it to eliminate one of Monster Zero's heads. But this was also the time when the missile was deployed. A few minutes after the explosion, Monster Zero suddenly flew up. It even regrew the third head. Godzilla showed signs of radioactivity plummeting, and it seemed it died. Monster Zero began to scream. All monsters around the world are waking up. Rodan also surrendered to Monster Zero. It seems that Godzilla's death made Monster Zero the new king on Earth. At the same time in China, Mothra also broke out of her cocoon and became a real butterfly. Meanwhile, on the Argo, people are analyzing why Monster Zero did not die. A scientist reviewed ancient documents and discovered that they recorded Monster Zero appeared after the stars fell. That is, it is likely that Monster Zero is not like Godzilla, originated from the Earth. It is an alien creature. And millions of years ago, Godzilla fought it. This creature is called Ghidorah. Except for the giant creature named Kong on Skull Island, Ghidorah is controlling the remaining Titans, attacking major cities around the world. On the other side, Emma discovered that Ghidorah was not restoring the planet, but using Titans to destroy everything and change the environment to suit it. She wanted to use the Orca to stop it, but Alan Jonah did not allow it. Madison now heard the conversation and secretly took the Orca to the city. At Godzilla's location, suddenly people saw a light in the sky, and Mothra flew here. In some way, Mothra made Godzilla relive. However, Godzilla is now very weak and has returned to the seafloor. Emma suggested that they add energy to it by detonating a nuclear bomb near its radiation source, and people go down in a submarine. Meanwhile, battles broke out fiercely between Titans and people all over the world. After a while, Serizawa's group discovered at the seabed ancient temples where people used to worship Titans like gods. In the end, they saw the cave, and Godzilla was eating radiation sources from the Earth's core. Because the nuclear missile launcher was broken in the process of moving down here, Serizawa took the duty to sacrifice himself to bring the warhead to Godzilla. At the same time, Madison entered a stadium and activated the Orca system. All the Titans calmed down and were no longer under Ghidorah's control. Emma also realized that Madison had acted and went to find her. On the other side, Serizawa brought the warhead to Godzilla's location, then approached Godzilla and detonated it. The huge explosion pushed the submarine out. Against everyone's expectations, Godzilla emerged to the surface of the water, on him now having a huge source of energy. Godzilla then did not leave, but looked at Mark's group. It took a while to think whether to kill humanity or not. It seems that it felt a little dangerous from people, but before the fear of everyone, it left. The Argo also came to pick them up. After a while, Ghidorah landed on the stadium and destroyed the Orca device. Madison tried to save the machine and was discovered by it. Suddenly a source of energy shot. Godzilla was on the beach and the army was coming in. The third battle began. People calculated the radioactive energy level in Godzilla's body would reach its peak around 12 minutes. That is, it could create a nuclear explosion at any time. Unexpectedly, Mothra also rushed into the battle and attacked Ghidorah. However, the Firebird Rodan stopped it. Suddenly, Ghidorah saw the city's power grid and sucked all the energy. Its power emitted dozens of miles, hitting Godzilla, then it swept Godzilla flying high and dropped him. This seriously injured Godzilla. Mothra then defeated Rodan. It came to support Godzilla but was hit by a shot from Ghidorah and died. There was no other way with Godzilla losing. Mark and Emma, after picking up Madison, corrected the Orca. They would ask for 2 minutes for Godzilla. Emma also volunteered to stay with the machine to pay for her sins. After that time was enough, and Godzilla was reaching the maximum energy level, everything around was burned. It just needs to brace for a nuclear explosion radius of dozens of miles. After 2 atomic breath blasts, 2 of Ghidorah's dragon heads are lost. Then Godzilla stepped on the last head of Ghidorah forever. After a while, Godzilla stood tall before all the other monsters. Godzilla was now the king of the monsters. Many years ago, people found an ancient drawing of a giant monkey fighting with Godzilla. At the beginning of Part 3, in 1944 during the Second World War, while fighting, an American pilot, Hank Marlowe, and a Japanese pilot fell to a certain island. When they got out of the plane, they had a battle on the island, but then a giant monkey appeared and made both of them stop their conflict. Currently, in 1973, 2 investigators of the Monarch organization, named Bill Randa and Houston Brooks, went to a U.S. senator. Landsat satellite has captured an island in the South Pacific. According to many legends, it is called Skull Island. Ships and aircraft often missing in this area. Bill wants sponsorship for a trip to find giant creatures here. Thanks to the incident of Godzilla discovered in 1954, very quickly the 2 people were approved, but they would need an additional support team. Not long after, at the airbase in Da Nang, only a few hours remained until the U.S. Army would withdraw all the last troops to return home, and the soldiers would return to their families. This included a group of soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Preston Packard. The commander was very happy, but Packard was not, and felt a bit anticlimactic. Suddenly, Packard received a call from Washington. His superior assigned his team to escort the Skull Island exploration group. Immediately, the spirit of cheerful Packard returned, and he accepted this task. Meanwhile, in District 5 Saigon, Bill and Houston sought a person named James Conrad, a former captain. James was very good at tracking and survival, so they hired him for exploring the island. Elsewhere, a photojournalist named Mason Weaver took the task of taking pictures/documents. She felt that the US government was hiding something and wanted to find out. Then in Bangkok, Thailand, everyone gathered on the boat. This trip is under the name of Landsat, and Monarch is a secret. Houston disseminated the mission. When they arrived at the island, they would divide and drop seismic charges down to survey the geology. 3 days later, people would gather in the north of the island waiting for the refueling team and leave. After a while, James and Mason both felt something was wrong, because on the train were all heavy weapons. If they were only surveying, it would not be like that. The next morning, the boat approached the island. There is always a thunderstorm around here. People had to go on helicopters to move inside. When they went in, there was shaking due to the surrounding environment, but in the end, they succeeded. Everyone was surprised because there were thousands of small islands, a beautiful scenery. Then everyone approached the big island and started to drop the seismic charges. Bill and Houston discovered that the soil layer was hollow. Suddenly, a tree flew up to the sky and destroyed a plane, followed by a giant hand grabbing another. Everyone was surprised when a giant ape appeared here. At this point, it stopped and did not attack them anymore, until Packard ordered to fire bullets into it. Though it was not hurt, all the aircraft were smashed. One by one, in turn, fell to the overwhelming power of the beast. Packard could only witness and vowed that he and it would have a reckoning. A moment after the giant had withdrawn, James and Mason's team were in one place, and the group of soldiers in Packard were elsewhere. Packard received the news that his vice captain, Chapman, and the heavy weapons were trapped near the area of the other creature. Then he ran to Bill and forced him to tell the truth. Bill admitted that they were not Landsat, but Monarch. The agency specializes in hunting unknown giant creatures. After knowing the incident about the Titans worldwide, the colonel is not afraid, but also wants to hunt for Titans. On the other side, James's group began to move to the north of the island, to the rendezvous. They met many strange creatures on the way, and most of them were very large. Packard's group had it even worse when they met a giant spider and it attacked everyone. After a few sacrifices, they defeated the spider. Meanwhile, Chapman was still near the giant ape, but it did nothing to him. He only saw it injured by fighting some creatures. Then he immediately saw it fight a giant octopus to find food. And the James group was moving when locals surrounded them. Fortunately, a man named Hank Marlowe appeared to reconcile. It turned out that he was the American pilot who fell here in 1944. They then moved to the village of the local people. Hank explained that from the past until now, the people here have been attacked by a species called the skullcrawlers. But after that, when the giant ape, Kong, appeared to protect the people, the humans rushed here and bombed the holes, letting the skullcrawlers up to the ground. That's why Kong is very angry. It needs to stop the skullcrawlers developing. A big skullcrawler destroyed Kong's family, and now only it is alone. Then they told Hank the plan to go north of the island. Hank asked people to repair the trapped boat here to leave timely. While everyone was there, Mason saved images of the land and the people here. She discovered a giant buffalo trapped and tried to rescue it. Of course, she was not strong enough. Then Kong took the tree out. He did nothing to Mason and the others. In Packard's group, they saw the blood of Kong left on a mountain. People realized that Kong could be hurt, and Packard was very happy about this. While Chapman was still trying to contact people, a skullcrawler appeared and killed him. In the morning, after the tomb of Hank's Japanese friend, and goodbye to the indigenous people, Hank and everyone were on the road. He was also eager to return to his family after 30 years. Suddenly, they caught the communication signal of Packard. People quickly gathered. Packard wanted to go west for people to seek Chapman. It is the land of the skullcrawler, and there was no other way. Finding people was still more important, so James led them away. After that, the group arrived at the fog and giant fossils of Kong's family. Everyone began to go through. When the sound of a monster cried out, all hid. A skullcrawler appeared. That was the one who killed Chapman, as James saw his dog tags. Everyone came out when they thought it had left. Suddenly, one soldier was eaten, and they fought with it with all their weapons, but they did not defeat it. Finally, with gas rising from the ground, Mason threw a lighter to create an explosion, ending it. After the battle, Hank suggested that people should not stay here, and James also told them that Chapman was gone. However, Packard still wanted to take revenge on Kong and took his group of soldiers to get the heavy weapons to fight him. After a while, they arranged the battle and exploded the areas to lure Kong. Because Kong was the only one maintaining order on this island, James, Mason, and Hank decided to return. The other side, Packard, did not fear but rushed over and got stuck in a fire trap. Quickly, Kong was seriously injured and collapsed. Before Packard exploded the bomb, James stopped him. The soldiers also disagreed with the crazy actions of Packard and lowered their guns. Surprisingly, the big skullcrawler, Skull Devil, was on the ground and discovered that Kong was weak. Everyone left, and Packard still stood there to detonate the bomb. Quickly, the Skull Devil gave him a slam. The two monsters then fought each other, and everyone tried to get on the boat. But the Skull Devil was determined not to forgive them and chased. Kong constantly held it back. The boat was also driven by Houston towards the Skull Devil. Then, Kong took a boat anchor to use as a weapon, which gave it an advantage. Suddenly, due to the influence, Mason fell into the water. While saving her, Kong was hit by the Skull Devil. The Skull Devil was about to attack Mason and swept its hand. But this was also its mistake. Kong immediately tore out its insides and ended the giant Skull Devil. Then, Kong released Mason down and returned home. Not long after, everyone successfully escaped the island. Hang was also returned to his family after 30 years, and the event here was kept secret by Monarch from the world until 2014 with the arrival of Godzilla. Opening Part 4. In the year 2024, 50 years after Skull Island and 5 years after Godzilla defeated Ghidorah. At this time, Kong had just woken up. Now he has grown a lot more and is as tall as Godzilla. Then, Kong came to find his friend, a girl named Gia, and then angrily threw a tree into the sky. It turned out to hit a barrier. Monarch has built a giant dome system over Skull Island because if Kong goes to the outside world, Godzilla will find it. There cannot be two tigers who share a mountain. Gia then returned to her sister, Eileen Andrews, who operated this base. Gia could not speak, so both often used sign language. Gia said that Kong was very angry when he was kept here, but Eileen said that was good for it. Meanwhile, humans have researched more deeply on Titans. Scientists think that inside the Earth's core is hollow, and there is a world in here where the Titans suck radioactive energy from the Earth's core. They even found a path to the other world in Antarctica. In Florida, at a weapon manufacturing company called Apex, operated by director Walter Simmons, currently an employee named Bernie is finding out that his company has a secret study in Hong Kong. Suddenly, there is an emergency signal. At this time, at Godzilla's location, the spines on his back glowed as if he felt a danger. Godzilla immediately went to land and attack Apex's factory. Simmons and engineer Ren Serizawa, the son of Serizawa who died earlier, also quickly boarded a plane. While Godzilla was destroying the factory, Bernie discovered a giant robot eye made by the company. After the incident, militaries around the world were put in an emergency state when Godzilla became an enemy of mankind. Madison was going to school and also knew the news. She went to find her father, Mark. Now he is the head of Monarch and is supporting rescue at the factory. Madison told Mark Godzilla would not be a human enemy, and something provoked it. Mark was very busy and did not listen to her. Madison then went to Bernie. It turned out that he often did podcasts about the mystery of Apex Company. At a university, Simmons and Ren went to a professor named Nathan Lind. He was the first to believe that the Earth's core was hollow and the homeland of Titans. They invited Nathan to participate in Apex's journey down underground. Satellites have measured an energy source below. This thing has brought strength to Titans, like something related to Godzilla's power. They need Nathan to find it, and the HEAV aircraft have been prepared. Nathan then suggested that they should use a Titan for navigation, as perhaps the memories of their ancestors will stay in Titans. Not long after, Nathan arrived and talked to Eileen about the plan. Knowing it could be the House of Kong and an opportunity to stop Godzilla, Eileen agreed. At the same time, they are also always wishing to go out into the world. After that, Kong was put on a large ship to the sea, plus the support of warships. To avoid Godzilla, they also have to take a detour. Simmons' daughter, Maya, also followed the journey. In the dark, heavy rain was very uncomfortable, but fortunately, Gia made him calm down. At this time, everyone was surprised to realize Kong could talk. It has learned sign language from Gia. Now the work has begun to make Kong remember Skull Island. However, the misfortune of Kong is not over yet. The next morning, he was eating breakfast deliciously when suddenly there was an alarm. Kong also discovered something wrong and tried to break the chains. On the other hand, the warships and aircraft started firing missiles as Godzilla was coming. Even so, it was not stopped and quickly ship was cut in half. But thanks to that, Kong escaped from the chains and prepared to fight. Unexpectedly, Godzilla flipped the boat down. The warships were then woken up and started to fight back. Then Godzilla got onto the boat and climbed up. Knowing Godzilla's direction, Kong jumped continuously to the aircraft carrier. Godzilla also climbed up. Immediately, two Titans punched each other's face. Kong was then pushed into the sea. It immediately put Kong at a disadvantage. At sea, Kong was no match for Godzilla. In the end, the military used a series of anti-submarine missiles to fire at Godzilla to rescue Kong. Kong was exhausted and fatigued due to nearly drowning. Godzilla is going back to continue. Nathan and Eileen suggested that the army should turn off the weapon system so Godzilla would think they had surrendered. In the end, Godzilla tried to warn them and left. Too bad for Kong, his first world trip immediately met the top 1 server. On the other side, the three, Madison, Bernie, and Josh, sneaked into the Apex factory. They discovered a secret basement which contained a modern spacecraft and samples of skullcrawler lizards inside. Suddenly, the ship was started and reported it would go to Hong Kong. Then, the ship moved through an underground tunnel very quickly. Meanwhile, due to being near Antarctica and avoiding Godzilla again, they brought Kong to Antarctica by plane. Kong is still quite shocked after the Godzilla incident. Although not sure, Nathan told Kong this was the gateway to his homeland and his family inside. Kong heard this and rushed into the tunnel. Everyone also followed in the spacecraft. Then Kong fell into a hole. All were shot away at an extremely fast speed to another world. The HEV is then operated. Kong also landed and started healing. Kong immediately felt familiar and ran somewhere. Suddenly, there were creatures attacking the aircraft. Kong immediately defeated one. Everyone also supported it to end the other one. It continues to go deeper into the place with strange blue metal structures and jumps to another land. Meanwhile, Madison's group went to the Apex facility in Hong Kong. They discovered that Apex has created a giant robotic Godzilla machine called Mechagodzilla. Ren Serizawa will control it. Quickly, Mechagodzilla easily defeated a giant energy source dummy shaped like Godzilla. However, the energy level is only 40% and the operation is stopped mid-process. They had to wait to find the energy source in the Hollow Earth. At the same time in Monarch, Mark also received the news that Godzilla had turned towards Hong Kong. In the Hollow Earth, Kong has found the destination. Here all is green. Kong also found an axe and a throne to sit like a king. This is really its home. Then Kong put the axe down on one point. Green energy is charged into the axe. On the other side, the Madison group discovered Apex used Ghidorah's head. Through its neural link, Ren can control Mechagodzilla. Meanwhile, Godzilla has entered the city with its spines glowing. It immediately drilled a hole with its atomic breath to the ground. Below, Maya sent a sample to Simmons. He immediately gave the order for energy regeneration and Ren started the Mechagodzilla boot process. Then the ground shook when Godzilla drilled down here. It called Kong to fight. Kong was not afraid. He carried the axe that had charged energy and the second half began. Now on land, Kong had the advantage to move and continuously hit Godzilla. The axe also blocked Godzilla's energy attacks. Then the two were blasted away after a clash and separated. And this is all Kong could do. The axe then gradually ran out of energy. Kong continued to attack by hand. Godzilla has shown his power and constantly pressed Kong. Finally, Kong lost. However, Kong still did not surrender. Seeing that the opponent was very weak, Godzilla also left. At the Apex Company, Mechagodzilla was now started. Surprisingly, Ren did not hold control. Ghidorah took control. It immediately destroyed Simmons and Ren and destroyed the mountain to get out, then constantly attacked people. Godzilla then came and the two sides rushed into each other. With the combination of Titan, Ghidorah's consciousness, and human technology, Mechagodzilla was incredibly strong. Godzilla was completely losing to the weapons Mechagodzilla was equipped with. The other side, Gia tried to wake up Kong. It has been weak for many hours. Nathan then exploded the HEV on the attacking creatures and successfully attacked. Gia tried to explain to Kong that Godzilla was not the enemy but Mechagodzilla. Then Kong understood and rushed to support Godzilla who was being overwhelmed. Each Titan on one side, but still not defeating Mechagodzilla. Kong suddenly realized that the difference is the source of green energy. It has found it and hit the power source. At the same time, the team, Madison, in the control room, also successfully destroyed the control system. Then Godzilla blasted atomic energy into the axe Kong held. The axe overloaded and cut off Mechagodzilla's head. After a while, Kong was startled to see Godzilla approaching after the battle. However, this time Kong did not stubbornly resist but submitted to Godzilla. Then Godzilla also returned to the sea. Sometime after, Kong has moved down into the Hollow Earth, its true home and rightful king. The movie here also ends. If you feel good, please give me a like, a channel subscription. Thank you everyone, and see you again.